just gonna jump right into chapter 1. So, acting like men. Be watchful, stand firm in faith, act like men, be strong, let all that you do be done in love. I was pretty excited when I walked into the diner and saw a table full of good old boys hungrily forking their breakfast. Truckers, retired farmers, and guys with military insignias on their baseball caps made up the group. These dudes were no nonsense, to be sure, and I looked up pretty suspiciously as I approached their table. Our church has a 650-acre camp in Croton, Michigan, and I love to go there when I'm working on a writing project. Croton is located in Newaygo County, a mostly woods, lake, and small town area of Michigan. What is lost in bling and bright lights is more than made up for in real as it gets, straight shooting authenticity. The particular diner I love to hang out in has no name, but the sign says good food, and it's not a lie. The place gets pretty packed, overflowing with regular folk who want fresh food for a fair price. Arriving at the crowded table, I sensed the men stiffen up and wondered if I made a mistake. Hey, you guys, have a second to answer a question for me? Everybody froze. I'm working on a book, I continued. I recognized a table full of good old boys when I see one, and I want to know what you think it means to act like a man. The first guy to break the silence objected gruffly to my use of the term old. I scratched my beard and said, "It takes one to know one." Everyone laughed, the tension broke, and they began to eagerly answer my question. Acting like a man means doing what you say you're gonna do, the first guy offered. It means not doing anything under the table when you are making a deal, another added. Keeping your word, a man they called the mayor declared, and not making any excuses, added the man jumping back in. Yes, they all seemed to chime in at that. Nothing worse than the man who makes excuses, blame others, and refuses responsibility for his own actions. No doubt there were real experiences that underlined the worthlessness of excuse makers for these men. You can learn a lot from regular folk who are too immersed in life's realities to posture for anyone. Every one of those guys is a Joe Screwdriver of sorts, and I renewed my determination to write a book that could connect with good men like them. The Bible asserts that the words it contains are God's words, and they are living and active. I know this is true because I have been studying the Bible for more than 3 decades, but I never open it without finding stuff I didn't see before, even in places I've studied in depth. That's why I shouldn't have been surprised when a recent journey through First Corinthians yielded an observation that had evaded me these many years. How could I have missed Paul's exhortation in First Corinthians 16:13 to act like men? I have witnessed the consequences for many men who have refused this exhortation by their practice, and to shame, I have at times failed to meet the standard myself. In what seemed like very first reading, the command hit me like a sledgehammer. I wrote the phrase down and began to pray that God would advance my understanding of what it really means to act like a man. Over a period of weeks, then months, I went back to this phrase again and again. Of course, Paul has all believers in mind with his five imperatives. However, it appears that these specific aspects of biblical maturity were best illustrated as expressions of masculinity. I like what Keistmaker states. Like a general in the army of the Lord, Paul gives short orders in rapid succession and expects his people to put his commands into practice. Clear, direct, succinct, just the way men like it. And while applicable to all, for the purposes of our study, we will apply to men what Paul seems to indicate should come naturally to men. The power of these phrases is in simplicity, and the more I reflected on them, the more impactful they have become. Act like men means a lot of profound things that I hope to share as this book unfolds. But before it reveals anything super deep and insightful, it has to mean the following basics, because it's just you and me communicating here. Let's make Paul's plural into a singular. Act like a man. Act like a man means don't act like a woman. Obviously, right? I have been happily married for more than 30 years and have no problem acknowledging that I'm a big fan of women in general in my life. Kathy specifically. I enjoy some days with the boys, such as our Idaho bear hunt coming up in a few weeks, but I am always happy to get back to my wife, daughter, and 2 daughters-in-law. If you read Genesis, the first book in the Bible, then you might remember Adam, the first guy, was only around for about 10 minutes before God declared it's not good that the man should be alone. Who knows what trouble this guy was already into. But God was not going to let it continue and provided a woman to be a helper fit for him. I think we would all agree that men and women fit together beautifully in every way, not just physically, but emotionally, relationally, and spiritually. One man with one woman for a lifetime is God's plan. Men and women are designed by their Creator to complement and complete, not to compete with one another. Each is to become more because of the other than they could ever become alone. That has certainly been true in my life because of Kathy. I know we live in a world where distinction based on gender is frowned upon, but that doesn't alter reality one bit. Men and women are equal under God in every way, but they are not the same. It is possible to make some general observations based on gender. For example, you may have noticed that your woman has a different emotional makeup than you. She is scared by things you don't even notice, like driving with your knee while you hold a coffee and answer the phone, or walking down a dark alley at night. She is touched by things that may seem silly to you, like romantic scene in a movie or a person in need who might make you more suspicious. Proverbs 18:22 says, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing." And just like every man needs a good woman, women need men. Most of all, they need their man to be a source of strength, stability, and leadership. The major decisions and responsibilities of your home are on you, not on your wife. They're your call. Listen to her. Learn from her. But don't fail to lead her. Not many things are sadder than a passive man acting more like a woman than his wife is allowed to dominate and usurp the role God has called him to fulfill. It's on you to make sure that doesn't happen. So step up and lead. Lead with love, service, and tenderness, to be sure, but act like a man and lead. Men are made to provide security for their wives. Men are designed to cover women with their strength, offering protection and security God made them to need. As men, we reap the benefits of our wives' emotional tenderness, and we have to make sure we are reciprocating with the strength they need. Sadly, though, many families do you know where the husband is counting on the wife to lead and in some cases even to be the main provider? There are a ton of acceptable divisions of labor that can work in a home, but none where you are not leading. It doesn't matter if she cuts the lawn and you cut the vegetables. It just matters that you lead. Failing to lead is failing to act like a man. I just checked with my wife and she said it was okay for me to say this. Act like a man means don't act like an animal. Across the spectrum, from the passive man who abdicates his God-given role as a leader is the dominant, hyper-macho pseudo-man who doesn't love his wife selflessly as Christ commands. Instead, he expects to be served and barks selfishly when he feels he is not the obvious priority. Years ago, we were honored to welcome a famous special guest into our home. Every preparation was made to present ourselves in the warmest and most hospitable, respectful manner. I will never forget the horror on my wife's face when our dog dragged its hind parts across the carpet in front of our guest in an apparent attempt to itch himself where he couldn't reach. How is it possible that our dog missed the requisite delicacy hospitality demanded? Answer: he's an animal. Animals are wonderful, but when men act like animals, everyone around them is in big trouble. We are not to put our own needs ahead of our wife or children. We are to honor our parents and do our best to remain aloof from strife. We are to spend ourselves and deny ourselves and exhaust ourselves in servant leadership for our loved ones. Don't worry if it's been a while since you golfed or hunted or hung out with your buddies. Those things have a place and can fit in when possible, but refusing to make your own needs top priority is what makes you a man and not an animal. Much more on that later. Act like a man means don't act like a boy. I have 5 grandsons, all under the age of 5. Each one is a special joy, but I must say that they have reminded me of what I forgot since my kids were small. In a moment, they can go from crying to laughing to fighting. They are loud, needy, and demanding. They are constantly on the search for new thrills, and their life revolves around the itch of the moment. Paul reports in 1 Corinthians 13:11, "When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, and I reasoned like a child." Kids are not able to figure out that the sun and the moon don't revolve around them. Men are supposed to know this. Acting like a man means developing a non anxious presence that sees the big picture, remains calm in a crisis, and won't cave under pressure. Godly men respond, they don't act. I confess to having taken far too long to learn that truth. God had put me in some very hot water before I was forced to realize the importance of being silent when slandered, merciful when in the right, and lovingly patient when wrong. Any kid can join a meaningless scrap in schoolyard, but Paul completes the passage I just quoted by saying, "When I became a man, I gave up childish ways." Act like a man doesn't mean act like a superhero. For some, forsaking the superhero persona may be the most important distinction. The above exhortations call a man to strength and stability, but those do not mean men don't feel things deeply and at times struggle profoundly. We are not Iron Man. Every man needs a place to be open and vulnerable, with brothers leaning together upon the Lord. I hope you have a small group of men you meet with regularly where you open your life up and seek strength of numbers focused on the common goal. A circle of men who will hear your confessions and assure you of God's grace is non negotiable for biblical manhood. None of us is everything God calls us to be, and James says, "We all stumble in many ways." Acting like a man does not mean acting. The term actually means conduct yourself. It is the idea of intentionally choosing your behavior to reflect the best of what God calls us as men to be. We will talk about that on day 2. But for now, take a moment to answer the questions below and pray for God's help. These are the following questions. What can you do today and this week to make a better servant and leader for your family? Basically, continue reading this book, pray, and just work for God's path. That's my answer. I don't know what everybody's answers would be. Probably throw them in the comments. In what ways might recent actions have appeared selfish, and what can you do to correct that today? Man, I do have a lot of selfish tendencies, but I try to push them all aside. I try to make sure I live for others, and my most selfish thing is the gym, and distractions. But I'm doing a lot better now. I'm able to read the Bible more. The last one. Do you agree that a man keeping his word and refusing to make excess is a good summary of manhood? But yes, that is the currency that can't be measured, but is rich in value. I mean, just gotta keep your word, right? Prayer. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for creating man in your own image. Today I want to be more conformed to your image by more fully expressing your design for manhood. Please forgive me for the times that I have acted selfishly or passively and failed to cover and care for my family as you have commanded. Please help me today to feel the weight of my strength and to use it wisely and carefully, so those you have given to my care will sense my strong love for them. Stir faith and hope in me now, Lord. I pray that the careful reading of these 40 studies will make me into a deeper experience of your plan for my life than I have ever known before. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So that was chapter 1. A lot of it still hits hard. I have my first attempt right here on March 4th, 2021. I met with a guy at a church, and I was going through something there too. I met him just out of blue. He prayed for me and took me to lunch. He was a hard biker dude, OIF veteran, and told me about his like 3 or 4 divorces and how he went through. And he saw me going down a destructive path. I was still drinking. I was still trying to figure everything out, but thankful for him for giving me this book. Um, digging. I've dug myself out of holes before. Um, my my thing is that I love hard, and I'm gonna love God even harder now. Whatever else happens in life, it's a blessing. And for this Thanksgiving, I pray you guys enjoy your family time. I hope that there's a bunch of love out there, and I hope you hug those you care about extra tight today. God bless everybody.